A very warm welcome to you. You're joining us here at Hyde Park on Other Derana 24. Tonight we will be talking about the region, the South Asian region and of course global affairs from an intelligence, national security perspective. I've invited to our studios representing the Synergia Foundation of India, a think tank based in Bangalore, the Chief Strategic Officer who was formerly the advisor to NSA and Defence Ministry of India on intelligence matters, and also the former Director General of the Defence Intelligence Agency of India. A very warm welcome to you. We have with us Lieutenant General G.A.V. Reddy. Ayubowan to you and Vanakkam. A very warm welcome to Hyde Park. I think a lot of matters to discuss at this stage. The South Asian region itself has gone through a lot of challenges, mayhem, natural disasters to man-made disasters, and of course political instability has shaken our society, our communities, our countries. How does India feel about this?
Yes, at the outset, thank you for having me on your show. I'm really honored to be part of this show today with you. Talking about the issue that you raised, when we talk of the geopolitical flux, because it is an interconnected world, whatever is happening across the globe, it will obviously impact our region, particularly South Asian region as well. And it impacts on every domain that is conceivable, whether it is political stability or economic upheavals or even the social unrest, and of course you also mentioned about the climate-induced challenges and crises. So obviously South Asia cannot be insulated from what is across the globe happening at this moment, and probably being part of South Asia and being in India, I see this is the ripple effect which is spreading across the region. And if you see, as an Indian, I see the complete neighborhood is going through a very, very difficult and challenging time. Whether it is political instability, we see what has happened just last 2 days in Nepal. And just few months back in Bangladesh, and before that in your own country here. The political instability and the, I would say, resistance by the youth. So that is one of the serious concerns for India, because after all, no nation can be secure unless the neighborhood is also stable and secure. In that context, Indian concerns are very valid. About economic instability also, whatever is happening in the region, it will obviously impact the Indian economic situation, because we do have trade and commerce links with all our neighborhood in the region, including the extended neighborhood. So it is again going to impact the Indian economy as well. And of course, last but not the least, the people-to-people contact that we have, the historical, cultural linkages that we have with all our neighborhood, including the extended neighborhood. Whatever is happening is going to impact Indian society, because we have our links with all the people around the region. So this is how I look at it. It is very, very challenging and testing times for the complete region.
You mentioned there are ripple effects on the region. I'd like to speak a little about this. We've seen Colombo, the economic crisis, and then the mass protests, the destabilizing of government, political instability in the country. Then we went to Dhaka, Bangladesh. We saw uprising there. Now Nepal is burning. And then beyond our region, we saw Indonesia also facing similar chaos.
Yes.
Where is all this coming from, General Reddy, in your understanding? You've headed the NSA, you've been an advisor to NSA, as well as DG of the Defence Intelligence Agency. So whatever you can share with us, for us to understand where all this is coming from, especially to our South Asian region.
Yeah, I would say it is basically twofold. One is internal and the other probably is external. When I say internal, there are numerous reasons which has led to these kind of incidents. unfortunate and sad incidents in all the countries that you mentioned, which are a cumulative effect of the internal pressures that the youth, and other than the youth, even the common man in all these countries were facing. I was also talking about the external influence in all these countries. Probably we cannot rule out the vested interest taking undue advantage of the internal pressures and fissures within the society, and they have their own agenda. But now coming to the internal reasons which have led to all these kind of unfortunate incidents, there is a pattern if you see in all the three nations, whether it is Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and now Nepal. The pattern is same. There are common factors which has led to this kind of situation. First is that there is a kind of a political, I would say, apathy towards the common man in all the three countries. The politicians probably are perceived by the common man as not being concerned about the common man's problems, day-to-day problems. So the distancing between the politicians and the masses is one factor. The second factor is the economic crisis, and that is primarily because of unemployment. This is a very pronounced challenge in all the three nations that we are talking about. Unemployment obviously leads the youth to get more frustrated, and the frustration can turn into violent aggression and kind of violent activities they have resorted to. The third is the most recent phenomena, I would say, is the availability of the social media handles and tools at the palm of each and every youth. Whatever the narratives which are going to be spread are rapid and widespread because of the social tools that they have, and all this cumulatively has led to these kind of incidents. So that's what I say about the internal pressures that are exerting on the youth. Externally, every nation in the, probably I would say some big powers have got their own interest. They are vying for space in South Asian region, and that power dynamics and power politics is also a factor. When they see there is an opportunity for them to play up and exploit the situation, they would also do that. That, of course, I can't say that in every case there is a tangible evidence, but one can guess that is also a probability.
I'm sure there's also intelligence understanding on how external powers work within smaller states or countries where economic challenges are rampant. So General Reddy, what kind of understanding in your perspective does these Western powers walk into or play a role in our countries or smaller states as Sri Lanka? We have to also talk about the Maldives, Pakistan, and around India we see South Asia. We do have many challenges, each of our countries. So what loopholes or what opportunities do these Western powers or external elements see when they try to engage or interfere in internal affairs?
Very interesting question you asked me, and this is the challenge for all the intelligence community. Constantly they have to be alert to see the patterns, analyze, and come to a sort of a conclusion. What is the agenda by whom and in what context this agenda is being followed by the Western powers? I would say the reason is all these nations, whether it is Sri Lanka, Maldives, or even our own neighborhood countries like Nepal and all, the geostrategic location is the most important factor. I would say all these nations enjoy this geo-sweet spot, if I may say, and because of the geostrategic location, that makes it very interesting and very, very important for the other powers to have a foothold and have a say in the internal affairs of these nations. And also, because of the geostrategic location, if the Western powers have a foothold in these nations, they can also expand their own ambit of area of influence and area of interest. And they can also make good the natural resources that is available in this region, which would serve well their own national interest. So these are the reasons that they do look at our countries in this region as a viable option to influence the countries.
How does India feel about this? I ask about this again. India, a global powerhouse, the strength of our region as well, and at the same time, the smaller countries, economically uncertain countries too, look to India for stability. So how does India feel about the destabilizing of states around its borders?
Yeah, India's stated policy, I'm sure you would be aware, and even your audience, India's neighborhood policy, which is neighborhood first, which clearly states that India is interested in the stability, peace and progress in the region. When you have stability in the region, entire region will have peaceful progress or development, or I would say sustainable development in the region. That's good for not only India, for every country in the region. So in that context, what can India do is to help nations to increase their capacities at the national level and also build the national resilience systems to not only face the current challenges but also prepare for the forthcoming and unseen, unforeseen challenges and situations. So this is what I would say is India's focus, to extend that hand of help to the neighborhood, to help them build the national resilience systems, procedures, processes and capacity building, so that they can sustain despite all the kinds of headwinds and crises that they are going to face, and they can proceed with their agenda of peaceful progress.
How does India respond to political unrest in the region, in neighboring countries? For example, Nepal, when protests turned violent. What role does India play, especially from your experience in the intelligence?
Yeah, as a nation, India is very clear. We should not interfere in the internal affairs, including the political affairs of any sovereign state, however close ally it could be, but we have no intention of meddling with the internal affairs of any of the nation. Neither it is desirable nor it is acceptable to any other nation. So having said that, India will always look at guiding the nations towards peaceful resolution of the problems, whether it is Nepal as of now or any other nation. I'm sure the political leadership of the country in India has spoken to the concerned influential people who can resort to dialogue and discussions and resolve the issues amicably, and beyond that we don't intend to interfere in any nation's internal affairs, including in the political issues.
In the face of regional instability and threat to regional stability, what role do countries, not just India, but other countries in the South Asian region have, and what kind of coordination, collaboration can be set up to ensure that the region is secure?
Absolutely, it's a very, very imperative need for the region, and as a region, all countries, whether it is big or small, geographically size doesn't matter, all countries have common concerns and common challenges in the region. The first step is to sit together and understand the common concerns, and if they build consensus to address these common concerns, I think a major step of effort would be undertaken. The basic issue in that is that trust building. Certain nations are not very comfortable at this moment of time to engage with some other country, probably in course of time. That needs to be addressed on priority. Trust building, political consensus at the highest level of the country needs to bring the political leadership of all the countries in the region together. Once they sit together, as I said, the common concerns will be understood, and also they will be able to address the common opportunities for mutual benefit. That's the way it should go about in addressing collective
Is there
challenges.
conversation now? Is there some sort of dialogue created surrounding this, especially I repeat about around India, close to 5 states border Nepal, and there is immediate threat to India too, and 2022, Colombo, Sri Lanka; 2024, Dhaka, Bangladesh; 2025, it's Kathmandu, Nepal. Maldives too saw a lot of challenges, and Pakistan did too. We understand the sensitivities surrounding India-Pakistan border issues, but isn't India worried about working to secure not just the Indian border but the region itself, because it looks like a trend is just setting its course?
Yes. Firstly, there are a lot of forums in the region, right from SAARC to BIMSTEC and so on, and even ASEAN. All those forums are there. They are meant for kind of consensus building and collective efforts in addressing these challenges, but some of them may not be as effective as desirable. But again, I say the reason for not being so effective is because of certain momentary trust deficit amongst the nations, and probably also because of the political instability in some of the nations. But then once the national leadership decides to sit together and address these issues, the forums are already there. The agenda and the vision and mission of these forums is well thought out over a period of time. They have got all the wherewithal to address the challenges. All that is required is to get into serious discussions, and no nation can be a bystander. They can't sit on the sidelines and wait for others to take the lead. Every nation has to be part of the initiatives, and proactively they have to get to address this. Talking about Pakistan, obviously we are worried about what's happening in the Pakistan nation. There are issues they have been perpetually facing: political instability, economic crisis, and of course the role of military in their country is also a cause of concern for us. But yes, if good sense prevails, I think the national leadership of Pakistan should also understand it is in their interest to shed all that kind of activities that they are resorting to, including terrorism and other activities, and adopt the path of progress.
General, you mentioned about a trust deficit which our region continues to have, especially about the interference of Western powers, superpowers, other major powers. India's involvement in not just in the region but also Sri Lanka, there have been anxieties among the general public, among political circles. What role do not just politicians but think tank and others who work in the strategic sphere have to sort of like dispel or ease out these anxieties? Because this continues to become a hindrance for the region to work together.
Absolutely. It's again very important question that you have raised. The main role of the think tank is to have an independent perspective of all the issues, going beyond the governmental and other structured organizations. And that's where the think tanks they take an extra effort to reach out to the public, multiple stakeholders and influencers, and have a free and frank dialogue with them, primarily to hear them, get to know their perspectives as to what are they thinking about, let's say, India. And then we understand it's not just I see every country through the prism of India. I need to understand how the other country sees India. In their perspective, I need to understand what is their expectations, what are the irritants in bilateral relations between India and the other country as perceived by them. So this is a major challenge for a think tank like ours, Synergia, and that's the reason I often come to Sri Lanka to meet good friends here, have a free and frank dialogue with them, and kind of unfiltered conversations makes me understand what is the real issue. What are the genuine issues that perceived by Sri Lankans about our engagement from Indian side? And once we get to understand that, as a think tank, obviously we have analysis process, and after analyzing, we take it to the policy makers at the government level, and we leave it to them to do whatever else as appropriately considered by them. So this is very important, and in that context I must say that very good think tanks in Sri Lanka are doing exactly the same action that I enumerated. They are communicating to the policymakers and the political leadership what they feel about the genuine concerns and other issues.
As we speak, I think it's important we touch on the geopolitical aspect of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka faces a number of influences, and there is also conversation among superpowers as well about the level of influence each of these countries have on Sri Lanka. So as a region also, sometimes India has been sensitive to other superpowers being more involved than India perceives should in Sri Lankan land or waters. So how do you think we should navigate this sensitive area? Because some of these powers come with a lot of support. Others come with influence to help Sri Lanka out. But this is also a problem faced by other countries in the region. The Maldives also face this issue.
As you rightly said, that it is a very, very sensitive issue to not only Sri Lanka, Maldives or any other nation in the region, because of the reason that when big power rivalry happens, let's say between Western powers and the regional powers like China, everyone comes with a kind of bouquet of offers to smaller countries to ensure that these offers are lucrative enough to be accepted by the nations. But the nations in the region should see the larger picture and see the intent behind the kind of help and offers that they are coming up with. Because in the past, even in Sri Lanka, there have been instances where there were certain offers made by even China to Sri Lanka, and then it landed up in the country landed up in debt trap, and then the economic crisis happened. So at the outset, when the major powers land in this region with kind of assistance being offered, one has to see beyond that what is the hidden agenda of these countries, and one should always be mindful of the national interest. Of course, you as a nation in Sri Lanka, you should always be careful of not being pulled into this power rivalry or the power shifts that keep happening. Having said that, I would also say that there is a lot of realignment and rebalancing of the geopolitical power equation which is happening at the moment because of the two dominant powers, that is US and China, trying to vie for space in the region. And they would always, whether it is US or China, they would always look for opportunities to have the kind of allies in the region which will further their interests. So we should be mindful of that. And as I said, that national interest of each nation should be to tread carefully, not being seen or perceived as aligned to one power or the other.
I think this also brings us to discuss Sri Lanka's role here. In your understanding, you have the military background, the expertise as a military person, intelligence overview, and also a strategic perspective with the research and the kind of dialogues you engage in. So General Reddy, my question is how important Sri Lanka is in this, not just national security of India or Sri Lanka alone, but in the regional security perspective as well as a geostrategic location. What's Sri Lanka's role here in ensuring regional stability?
Sri Lanka has a very major role in the region to play, and that's because of the geostrategic location, as I also mentioned earlier. And it's the crown in the South Asian region because it sits at the head of the slogs, the sea lines of communication. 85% of the global trade is through seas, and Sri Lanka's location overlooking the Indian Ocean region, needless to say, it's very, very important. Not just the location, the role that Sri Lanka has played in the past in ensuring the regional stability and not playing up one against the other in the contest of major powers is also admirable. And even today, as a national policy, I am sure Sri Lanka would never get involved in kind of power tussle between, let's say, India and China. And I think national interest of Sri Lanka doesn't permit to get involved in power play of these big Asian giants, India and China. And national interest of any nation is to cater for the requirements of the nation's people. And Sri Lanka should look at exploring further the opportunities that it has got because of its location, because of its vast natural resources, including the human resource, and further focus on enhancing its own prosperity goals.
I think we'll take a short break here at Hyde Park to discuss further, not just on regional security, but also climate challenges and maritime challenges that we face as a region, and how Sri Lanka, as a small island state, can work with the rest of the region. We're in conversation with the former Director General of the Defense Intelligence Agency and advisor to NSA and Defense Ministry of India, Lieutenant General Reddy. We'll see you after this short break. Welcome back. We're in conversation with a former intelligence chief and advisor in India and a chief strategic officer of the think tank G.A.V Foundation based in Bangalore of India. We'd like to talk, General Reddy, about maritime security. Again, it sits in one of the world's busiest sea routes where trade connectivity from Africa to the other end is happening. So with trade, economic stability all lying on this trade route, how important is maritime security in the face of illegal fishing, piracy and other challenges that we face as a region?
Yes, maritime security is absolutely important, particularly in our region, because all of our nations are highly dependent on sea lanes of communication for trade and commercial activities. And talking about the maritime security challenges, some of them you just mentioned. The pattern is that the security challenges in maritime domain are multiplying by year, I would say, because innovative measures are being taken by those illegal operators in the maritime domain. And whatever security challenges they are throwing at is only an indication of what else we can expect in the years to come. So there is a requirement of concerted effort to see innovatively how we can curb these challenges to all of our nations. And that's one important aspect, that sustained efforts have to be pulled in, and it requires collective effort. It requires allocation of budget, because it requires technology to be incorporated in the measures to challenges, addressing these challenges. So a lot of effort, right from building consensus, allocation of budget, capacity building to handle with that, and also taking responsibility of various measures to be incorporated by all the stakeholders. It can't be one nation doing for all others. Everybody has to chip in, because the security challenges in the maritime domain is affecting everyone in the region.
But what are the top maritime security threats we face? Also coupled with the risks, we're talking about energy connectivity here, which there's a thin line between it being a risk to national security and connecting the region. So how do you think our countries should work, not just individually but together, to ensure that we are secure?
Yes, maritime security, the major security risk as I see is, you mentioned about energy security. Beyond that, even undersea cables, which carry 85% of the data in the entire world, flows through these undersea cables. And there have been concerted efforts by the anti-national elements and others to disrupt this flow of data, because that will
How does that happen?
They can go down, cut the snap the cables, and then nations will be paralyzed. Just imagine if the data cables are cut or the data cable system is disrupted intentionally, then the whole finance and banking systems and even critical data of the national security apparatus, everything comes to a standstill.
Is there a risk of data theft as well? Sorry for my ignorance,
yes,
but is
yes, that can also happen. Anybody can steal the data, and data is like gold, because the value of the data is in today's scenario. So one has to be careful of securing the undersea cables also. In that context, I would say the effort which is being put in our region is not adequate. I would underline the fact that probably we are not taking it seriously as required at this juncture, and it is high time that we realize the seriousness of this challenge. We take efforts to build capacity to deal with this, securing the undersea cables.
When you say capacity building, what kind of capacity are we talking about?
Yes.
I mean, more than personal, I think this is all about AI to
yes,
automated systems.
It involves both hardware and software, and firstly you need to have the vessels which are specifically designed to undertake the repairs of the cables, and in our region we don't have, barring a few parked in maybe Dubai and Singapore, and that's how the turnaround time of the repair is colossally long. Like it may take a couple of months, because the engagement of those vessels which are already committed cannot be withdrawn at a crisis moment. So we need to have more such capability in terms of vessels, and also highly skilled manpower to operate those vessels, and also technological tools to support that human resource which is operating on those vessels. It's human intensive capital investment, human resource scale, human resource requirement, and also technology supporting this effort.
You spoke about the United States and China. This also takes us to trade. You've seen traditional wars. We see wars being fought. But today we're talking about a trade war. With the US President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs becoming a major dialogue across borders and countries and trading partners, the question of competition versus compromise, and what bargaining power do countries have? What edge do we have to collaborate, cooperate, and also bargain? So does this put our countries at a risk of national security?
Yes, you rightly said what kind of leverages that the nations have is the bottom line of successful trade agreements being finalized between nations, irrespective whether it is with the US or any other nation. So those nations who have the strategic leverages with them are the ones who conclude the trade agreements very early and so easily, I would say. But the nations which don't have that kind of strategic leverages have got no other option but to have the kind of patience, either to have the negotiations prolonged to the extent that one party convinces the other and the mutual benefits are agreed upon or arrived at. Otherwise, in a hurry, there is no way that a nation should succumb to these kind of pressures being brought upon by the bigger powers, and it's not necessary that you compromise the national interest in terms of your economy, your trade, and conclude the agreements at the earliest. I think patience and diplomacy and negotiations should be the formulae for ensuring that it is a mutually beneficial trade agreement, and that should be the way.
SAARC hasn't worked, but doesn't this bring us once again to look within to our region to see how we can work together to make stronger connections and work together? Although the countries seem weak with other internal challenges and instability, what are the impediments do you see through your strategic research and perspective, General Reddy, to understand this dynamic?
Yes, SAARC was started with a very good intent of strengthening the regional cooperation amongst all the nations in the region with common interest and mutual benefit as the formulae. But over a period of time, unfortunately, some of the nations who are members of the SAARC have got unduly influenced by the external regional powers, extra-regional powers, and that has diluted the purpose for which SAARC was thought of and conceived. So if we can shed those external influences in the region, and only as a regional interest, if the countries sit together and work on that earlier conceived purpose of regional stability and strengthening the regional trade and commerce, that would work wonders even now.
Is there potential for economic prosperity
Absolutely.
in the region?
Yes, absolutely. This region is blessed with all kinds of resources, including the human resource, the natural resources, and so there is no way that we should forget about the purpose for which SAARC was initially conceived and started. We should only think of avoiding the external powers influence in SAARC being diluted.
And to wrap up, I think we have to talk about climate change and how
Yes.
our nations should be sensitive and proactive to act to not just save our environment, but to look at sustaining our gains as a human society, but as a region too. What sectors or what areas should be put together nationally so that every country plays its part, as you say?
Yes, it's a very important challenge. Firstly, I would say the whole of the nation's effort is the ideal formula to addressing this challenge. It can't be a segment of the government or a segment of a nation's effort. It has to be the whole of the nation's effort. And second point I would like to say is that we are thinking that climate change will go into effect as probably after a couple of years or so. But unfortunately, it has already started impacting us. The kind of unseasonal rains, floods, and the cyclonic effects often is going to disrupt the complete life of the country, and particularly the coastal belt, and countries like Maldives, Sri Lanka have got already impacted. And that's the reason that we need to put in efforts now and not keep on postponing that hard decision of attempting to address this challenge. Otherwise, if climate is impacted, the climate impact will adverse the economy of the nation. And of course, when the economy is going to be at stake, the livelihood of all the inhabitants of the region will be at stake. So it's the first important aspect that climate impacts economy, and economy impacts every citizen of the region. So I think all of the nation effort, and this is the need of the hour to address this. It can't be deferred any longer. We are already delayed.
Thank you very much for your thoughts, General Reddy. We are indeed thankful for your time here at Hyde Park during your brief visit to Colombo, and for sharing your strategic perspectives and of course your experiences as a military intelligence personnel.
Thank you. I enjoyed interacting with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We were in conversation with Lieutenant General Reddy, Chief Strategic Officer of G.A.V Foundation in India, and some of the key positions held by General Reddy during his intelligence security career were former Director General of the Intelligence Agency of India, an advisor to the NSA and Defence Ministry of India on intelligence matters. We'll see you again next week with yet another discussion here at Hyde Park. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.